All right, Sho Sho, welcome. Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you.
So good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to come out and talk to us.
My
So,
pleasure.
so why don't you just tell a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your clan, and where you grew up.
Okay. My name is Sho Sho Esquiro. My Casca name is Billy Licka. I come from Ross River, Yukon, Tutalini, where two rivers meet. In the Yukon, I grew up the majority of my life in the Yukon. Very, very proud Yukoner. and I've lived a little bit in beginning of my life, Ross River, a little bit in Whitehorse. So yeah, very proud Yukoner here.
Perfect. So you spent some time in Ross River amongst your relatives and family. And how did you get into fashion?
I like to say when Barbie needed an upgrade in her wardrobe.
Perfect.
So I also left out that I lived a little bit in Atlin, um, which is in BC, but about 2 hours away from Whitehorse. So back then we had no television, no type of entertainment at all. So it was kind of our job to entertain ourselves. My mom is a wonderful sewer. I like to say I was her thread cutter, and anything she made, I was able to cut the threads, and it just kind of grew from there. I had a very special auntie that was an amazing seamstress, moccasins, gloves, hats. And I often remember, and I was only about 6 years old, sitting at her kitchen table, CBC radio softly playing in the background. And she always had a tin, and she always had a project on the go in the tin. And the minute I got to her house, was one of my most favorite places to go in the world, was to look in her tin and to see what she was making. So from a very young age, I was exposed to sewing, beading, using different hides and furs. And so that was always very special and very important to me.
Yeah, it sounds like the land had a big influence on you.
Very much so, yes.
Yeah. So I've had the pleasure of going up to Caribou Pass with Bubba. I've been,
Beautiful.
oh my goodness, it's incredible up there. And, just looking at the land and the landscape and the animals and everything that um, I think I took for granted for a very long time has started to influence my work. How has it influenced your work?
Definitely having that respect for Mother Nature, having that immense respect, growing up with people that hunted for food and wanting to make the most of everything. I remember actually your dad had when I came to town, he got a moose, and they wanted me to work on the hide. Very tough. I remember thinking this is like a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, and I was only going to be home for like a couple of days, and I thought, okay, well, I've done all this work on it, then that's that. And here, Uncle Jack was like, oh no, we'll just put it in the freezer for you until the next time you come.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
So, growing up in the north, nothing goes to waste. The beautiful landscape, the beautiful seasons, every different season, the colors, um, the people that live off the land. I find that very inspiring. And so there's nothing like growing up in such a beautiful place. And with that, everything inspires you. Even a fireweed, which some people would say is a weed, that grows along the highway. I find that very inspiring. I just love to see the different seasons, all the different colors, and it's just probably the most inspiring, beautiful place that I've ever been or lived in.
So we're just talking about inspiration from the land and your aunties and your families and your uncle.
Mhm.
And you were saying that you had the tin pot that your auntie had that always had a project in it. Did you think, as a 6-year-old, and as you started growing up through high school time, did you ever think it would lead into a fashion career?
You know, one of the wonderful things about having a parent as an artist, um, I was always encouraged to dream big and to never set any type of like limitation. And that will go all the way to high school and having an amazing sewing teacher, Mrs. Kenny. And I remember picking these super difficult patterns that I'm sure she wanted to like pull out her hair. You know, I just didn't want to sew like a boxers or an apron or anything like that. Um, and she would say, "We're going to get through this. We're going to work through this." And same, I play the piano. I had a wonderful piano teacher where I'd pick super hard, you know, Beethoven, and they would always work through it as tough as it was, or breaking it down in little sections. So having like in those formative years, having really encouraging mentors and teachers, and never having anybody saying, "This is too difficult for you," I think really helped. So myself not having any like limitations, or not ever like, you know, doing a show in Paris on the Eiffel Tower. Of course, I wanted to do a show in Paris. I didn't really imagine it was going to be on the Eiffel Tower, but things like that, I never thought were too crazy of a dream. And I think I see that in a lot of artists where you just dream big and you have these wonderful visions of projects that you want to do, or different um, techniques or different skills that you want to better, or you want to learn more about it, or you want to increase your knowledge on it. So that's something I think as artists in general that we have in our heart, our soul, and our mind, where we don't really feel like things are too out of reach. And I think that's helped me a lot in my career.
Wow, sounds like it. Yeah, for sure. It's that hard work and perseverance and pushing through, and as you said, breaking it down into smaller chunks so that you can actually attain skill within those moments. What are you most
Yes,
proud?
it's not so overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And you talked about also mentorship and having those people like Miss Kenny that who encouraged you, regardless of what what project you wanted to take on,
Yes.
to gain that skill. I mean, that's amazing for sure. What are you most proud of in your career?
Um, there's a couple of there's probably like three things that stand out in my career. Um, One of them being able to be part of the first fashion show at Adaka,
Mm, yeah.
and front row and center, we had so many beautiful Yukon elders. So many of them are actually gone over to the spirit world now. They're not even with us anymore. Front row and center, and just sharing my fashion with them. And I remember Maida Donacy, who's a was
Mm,
beautiful casket elder, amazing seamstress, sewed well into her late 80s. Um, After the show, I had made this dress, and called "The Girl Who Lived with a Salmon," and it's a Casca story, and the whole bodice is beaded, and there's fish skin on there, and I mean thousands of hours went into this dress. And after the show, she just took my hands and she goes, "Oh," she goes, "you got so much patience." And to me, that still is by far the best compliment that I've
mm,
ever had. um, so that was one of the most memorable, as well as doing the show in Paris. That was a quite an amazing experience on the Eiffel Tower. Um, Most recently, actually yesterday, I was part of an article in Vogue talking about Indigenous fashion and sustainability. And being in Vogue was always a dream. Aside from that glossy Sears catalog that we used to get as kids, Vogue was a step above that. Something you'd see in the doctor's office, or we would never afford or be able to have my own copy. But to me, that was kind of like the epitome of the fashion world, and getting that acknowledgement, with so many different amazing peers that are in the industry. Somebody else that's in that article is Virgil Ortiz, who is a mentor of mine, talking about mentorship and how important that is. And so just even being in an article that he's in, because he's somebody that encouraged me so much, created space for me. He allowed me, I remember, to do a photo shoot in his home, in New Mexico. He's designed for Donna Karen. But I remember one of the things that he said to me is, he goes, "There's enough room for all of us." And so, especially in an industry like fashion, not so much in native fashion, but fashion as a whole, as an industry, there's a lot of cattiness, competition. And so when he told me that, it was really good advice, because, you don't get jealous of when somebody is doing better than you, per se, or somebody that's getting acknowledged more than you, or somebody, you're happy for them. And so that was a very good teaching that he gave me. I would say the last uh, really neat accomplishment, was late last year. I did a show in the San Francisco City Hall, and it was for the closing ceremony for the 50th anniversary of the Alcatraz occupation. So um, uh, that was significant to me, because so much of my work can have a political undertone to it. And I do like to bring different Indigenous subjects or things that we're dealing with to light, things that might not always be, somebody would say, "Oh, what inspired your collections?" And he's like, "Oh, the colors of spring," which is fine and beautiful. But things like the murdered and missing Indigenous women, things about residential school, those are kind of things that just as an artist, I like, since I have a platform, an international platform, I like to bring awareness to that. So getting that acknowledgement, um, to be part of something as wonderful as, 50 years later, here's the city of San Francisco celebrating this occupation, which wasn't the story 50 years prior. So just being a part of that was very significant, and kind of gave me uh, just a bit of an inkling that people are understanding my work and respecting that, it's a bit deeper, and there's deeper meanings to it. So those are the things that I'm probably most proud of.
Holy man, yeah, no, that's if somebody could have a career with just some of those things would would be amazing.
No.
When the first time I met you actually was when you did that at DACA show, and I remember that show and how they put it out to how they built it from a foundation of tradition from the really early on uh,
Yes.
skin dresses and that kind of thing. So what's next for you?
That's a great question. Because we're kind of dealing with the global pandemic, and so a lot of my shows. I had a show at the Bill Reed Gallery, a one-woman exhibition that is to be up for 5 months in the main gallery. That was supposed to open in October, but now has been postponed till October 2000 or 21. Um, so that that was a big shock because that was something that kind of was going to take over my year, as well as Santa Fe Indian Market has now been canceled, which is another probably biggest show of the year for me. And so I'm here in Las Vegas, and I've been sewing masks. um, there's a lot of unknown right now, and so for artists, it is very trying times, so we say. But I do have that contract for the Bill Reed show, something that I'm very proud of. I like to say, um, for I wouldn't consider myself young. I'll be 40 this year. But to be my age, indigenous woman, to get a one woman show exhibition
Mm.
in a gallery such as Bill Reed, I would almost have to be dead. So I'm I'm glad that I'm alive and I'm able to have that opportunity. And so that's definitely something. So different concepts for me. A lot of my concepts will come from prayer, um, and so I have a pretty neat concept for that. And probably this coronavirus is gonna be somewhat influenced within that as well. Um, and so basically, that's kind of my. I know that's set in stone. We've talked about it. That's going to be my next. Even though it's over a year away, something like that is big. So
Yeah,
I do. I don't know if you know because I do it so little, but I also paint. So I'm going to incorporate some of my paintings with some of the fashion. So it's going to be really neat. I'm really excited. I love working with Bill Reed Gallery. I think they're great, and that's kind of my big goal for the next little while.
yeah. Oh, wonderful. I have seen your paintings. They're amazing. Absolutely amazing. As an artist, you come up against stumbling blocks like this coronavirus. What do you do as an artist? How do you make your way in a situation like this?
Um, I think that's a great question, and I think this is new for everybody. We've never seen anything like this. Um, Especially in the States, it's a bit uh, just the way people are dealing with it is a bit different. I understand there's 0 cases now in the Yukon, which is awesome. They're probably finding about 100 new cases a day here, so that can be very scary. Um, I just started sewing these masks just uh, to give to give out, not charge or anything. I've been making ribbon skirts, and so people have seen them, and so that's kind of what I'm keeping myself busy. I have some beads. I have very little. It's not like I'm back in Canada in my studio, which is amazing. Like I have sometimes I feel like I'm a hoarder because I'm like, do I have this? And then I have it. So I'm like, I don't know whether to be happy that I have this or I'm just a hoarder. But I have a big, huge room of every color bead you could ever want. And we're talking about sustainability. I have like literally probably 10 big clear garbage bags full of scrap leather and just, if I was there, it would be a different story from the limited supplies that I have here. Um, so I think just thinking about different concepts for the Bill Reed show, and just trying to navigate, um, just even trying to keep positive and not trying to feel like the dreaded, where when is this going to be over? And um, I have a very soft spot for elders, and so just this, just seeing how many people are being affected, especially the elderly, it's hard. So I think being creative would probably help that. But yeah, it's very, when you're self-employed, um, and a lot of people are out of work, and kind of the first thing that people will stop buying is art. Um, so it is a interesting time
Yeah, for
to be living in. But again, I mean, I think this can definitely influence our work. And so there will be something positive about it that will come out, whether it's people being more compassionate or just appreciating, everything a bit more. The meat supply is really dire down here.
mm,
So I think just overall, however you think this started, um, there needs to be more of a respect for animals and for Mother Nature. And so I think globally, people will feel that, whether it's now or later. It's kind of staring us in the face that, we we're consuming, especially the fashion world, because they make these huge collections, and some of it's like fast fashion that's like in one season out. It's not sewed with quality, so it'll end up in a landfill. And now that we've passed um the spring kind of season, now whatever was shipped out would be for spring. Now if and when the stores open, it's going to be summer. So essentially, they don't know what to do with all that clothes. Big stores like Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus are closing down. So I think overall, people are really going to look at, this fast fashion, this all this waste, this, because they use a lot of toxic dyes that go back into the water, and like even to make a pair of jeans, you need over 100 gallons of water. I mean, it's just, we really have to rethink, whether it's what we're wearing, what we're eating. Um, Talking to Jenny and your dad, I was I had to kind of laugh because she goes, "Yeah, we're gonna go out into the bush," and I thought, well, there's only like 350 people in Ross. Like, essentially, you are in the bush. But that's the great thing about the Yukon and being Casca, and having that connection to the land. You can just go. And so yeah, it's a trying time for everybody, and everybody, it's affecting everybody. And so I think some pretty cool art's going to be coming up out of uh, a time like this, and we just kind of got to pull together and get through it.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, there's so much. That was a great answer. Holy cow! Just talking about your sustainability in the fashion, the article in the Vogue magazine, it was about that and about talking about how indigenous sustainability in fashion is what's missing in, as you said, I think it was called fast fashion. So are you going to put that sort of element of sustainability in your show and Bill Reed?
Yeah, definitely, because that's something that I've always done. I've always, some people will say upcycled, some people will say deconstruct. Um, it's quite neat because I don't know very many stories about my Casca grandma, but one of the stories I did hear is she would pick apart um, a jacket, and then she would use the pattern from the jacket, and and so that's something, whether we've done that with our clothing, whether we've done that with, like say a vest that's worn out, that had beaver fur on it, because beaver fur, doesn't last forever, it dries out. We take that off and maybe make a drum bag out of it. So that's something that, that we've always done. And so I was excited when Vogue was asking me those questions, because that's, essentially like what I've been doing. um, I'll get some secondhand clothing and deconstruct it, make something completely new out of it. Um, and so, I even had like an old piece of luggage that I like the pattern on it. And so I cut it up and made part of it into a corset. So there's always, I'm always trying to reuse things. And so that will definitely play a big part in my show, because that's something that I love to do. And that you know, that I, that's kind of like what who I am, is to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So that's definitely going to influence the Bill Reed show.
Well, fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward towards that show for sure. And just any parting words for young artists coming up in the indigenous fashion world?
Definitely. Um, really, uh, when you have a passion, whatever it is, whether it's cooking, whether it's carving, whether it's fashion, um, really allow yourself to be open and to educate yourself in any way. Um, I remember going back home and working with Uncle Amos, famous Amos, and coming from the city, the bustling city, and for the first like 3 days, we're working on beaver pelts and muskrat, and he just had me watch him. And at first I was like, golly, I came all the way from, Vancouver, and he's not even talking to me, and I'm just sitting here watching, and then it kind of hit me like, this is how we learn. You know what I mean? There doesn't even have to be a lot of verbal, um, he doesn't have to say a whole lot. And I did learn a lot about like skinning and stretching the beaver pelts and stuff. So that was a good little lesson to me. Um, but always be of service, and always seek out a mentor. That's really important. And to just learn on your own as much as you can, um, about the craft that you're interested in. Um, and do it a lot. And one thing that I think gives me an edge is I always challenge myself. I never get comfortable in a technique. I always say that I always pick the hardest way to do it. And at the time I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Why did I want to do it this way? But it pushes you, and you get a better understanding of your craft.